All right, let's get this rolling. It is 11:25 p.m., October 30th, on a chilly Thursday night right here on the second floor of an undisclosed apartment building right outside of Nashville. It is a great night. We've got 7 games on the card for you that I'm going to predict right here in this show. We had 8, and one of them was an early pick. That was Tulane, and that did not go well. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But for now, sit back, relax. If you're in the car, buckle up, eyes on the road, and let's talk ball. Roll the music. Alrighty, welcome Saturday Snap Count Week 10. We have 7 games to talk about. We had one game that we early predicted on Tuesday. That was Tulane minus 5.5 on the road at UTSA. We early predicted that solely because we knew we would be recording this show after that game was over. Looking back in retrospect, we probably should have just left that game out completely because it was a terrible, terrible performance from Tulane. They just played themselves right out of the playoff. They played themselves right out of the AAC championship game. And John Summerall might have just coached himself out of any other open positions in the country. I'm not really sure if I'm watching that game and you watch Tulane and they've got their playoff hopes on the line tonight. They're at a point in their season where they can't lose again because they are G5. They've got one spot in the playoff that is held and reserved for them. They've already lost one game this year. They had to win out. And then you go on the road to UTSA in a dome somewhere out in San Antonio that was probably about 25% of the way full, and they just walked you like a dog. And I just don't get it. I said last week, man, I went on a mini rant last week about how I genuinely don't know how to predict these games right now. Like, since I've been doing the show publicly, we've had one great week. One fantastic week. I think it was 10-3. One of the better weeks we've had in a long, long time. And I'd said before we were doing the show publicly, we were, 3 or 4 or 5 games above 500. We had some 7-4s, some 8-4s, 6-3, things like that. Like it was just nothing. I could have just rolled out of the bed and predicted these games and we'd have got records like that. And then as soon as I go public, minus the 1 week, we just have had trouble, man. And I don't know what else to do. I've done things differently in the way that I research. I've done things differently on the way that I predict as far as like maybe there's some second guessing there. But it seems like when I go off of the research that has done so well for me in the past and make a prediction, and then that prediction fails, then I go the next week and then I say, I'm going to do the same research, get the same prediction, but I'm going to second guess myself here because last time it didn't work. And then that doesn't work. And I'm really between a rock and a hard place here. Now, I will say that there was a little small part of me that had Tulane going in there and not losing the game and not necessarily losing in the fashion that they did. But there was a small part of me that believed Tulane could have won this game and not covered. And you may be wondering, then why would I have predicted that game and put it on the card? Well, that's simply because it's hard to be 100% confident about anything, about any pick or prediction in this industry. And I've always said that if I have to be over 50% confident in a prediction to give it out, because there are games where I don't know of a great example right off the top of my head. Let's just say Georgia and Florida playing this weekend. That game is not on my card. And it's not because, I don't like the game. Obviously, it's going to be a fun game to watch. And I've always said I choose the marquee games that are going to be entertaining. And so you may be wondering, well, why didn't that game get picked? Well, it's simply because neither side really compels me. I don't really feel over 50% confident about Florida or Georgia. And I don't even know what the line was. It wasn't good enough at the time that we put these on here to be added. So that's kind of where I was at. But I had over 50% confidence in Tulane, and they failed. And like I said, they played themselves out of a playoff. That is completely toast. 0% chance they get in now. And John Summerall might have just kept himself firmly planted right in Tulane, which maybe is what he wanted. I don't know. We'll see. But if you are looking at him as a candidate for your school, especially LSU, I would say in this case, you got to go on the road and beat that team. I mean, UTSA was, what were they, 3-4 going into this game? Yeah, that sounds about right. 3-4 going in. Tulane is 6-1 or 7-1 or whatever it was. And like I said, you have a chance to win out and go to the playoff potentially. So, yeah, tough game, tough start to the card at least. But who knows? We could win the next 7 games, go 7-1, and we'd be laughing about that. We'd be like, remember when Tulane lost on Thursday night? It could happen. But anyway, we've got 7 games to go over, so we will get that started right about now. Just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything else before we get started. I don't think I am, so we got over Thursday's game. That was the only game that was non-Saturday that we had picked, so we will move to Saturday morning. Let's start with Vanderbilt +3 at Texas. Now, one interesting thing about this game I'm going to throw out there. I was sitting at home this week, and I don't remember exactly what we were doing. I think it was probably around Tuesday where I was doing the beginning of the week show, recapping the previous week. And my wife is a huge supporter of mine. She loves that I have found an interest in doing something like this, and she likes that, how much I love the show. Granted, sometimes I do it so late that she's like, why are you doing it so late? Why don't you just find a way to do it earlier? And I think it kind of bothers her a little bit that I come to bed late, but we'll work through that. We'll find a way to make that work. But she comes to me this week and she's like, I want to make a pick. And I kind of was like, huh? She's like, on your next show, I want to make a prediction. I want to be on the show and make a prediction. Now, I offered her the opportunity to be on the show, and it didn't happen, but that's okay. But she did make her pick, and her pick was Vanderbilt +3. So for all my Vanderbilt people out there who listen to the show and who are massively supportive, there you go. I will say it does align with where I'm probably going to land on this game, but I actually will go into it and talk about it. My wife is known to pick based off of logos and colors and people she knows on the team. Like she knows Diego Pavia, and and it may or may not have just been the first game on the list, and maybe that's why she picked Vanderbilt. I don't know. And Vanderbilt is written in green, and Texas is written in red because of things that I'll get into here in a second. And so who knows? I really don't know. It's my wife's logic. She had every opportunity to pick any of the other 6 games we're going to go over tonight. But so let's make it official. The first ever. What can I call that? Wife pick sounds really lame. Let's workshop that, people. Let's workshop that. Let's everybody send in some comments, send in some ideas on what we can call my wife's one prediction of every week. But for now, let's call it the unnamed wife pick. For now, we'll workshop it. But unnamed wife pick is officially Vandy +3. If it ever is different than anything that I'm doing, I will make it special on the graphic. But for now, we're just going to leave it how it is. So yes, Vanderbilt on the road. They're having an amazing season in terms of Vanderbilt standards and in terms of really anybody's standards, which is fun. It's been a great time watching them. Can you guys still see me? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put my notepad right here. Only problem is I can't see myself, which kind of throws me off a little bit, but you guys can see me. Yep. You guys can see me, so that's what matters. So we know, you guys know we start every prediction with our models and our statistics that nobody else cares about but us. But we have this simple rating system has Vanderbilt as a 15-point favorite over a average team on a neutral site, and Texas at an 11. So we have a 4-point edge to Vandy in that category there. Vanderbilt being at 15 is good enough for 13th in the country. They're both at a 1 on the strength of schedule model, so just above average. And where they really start to stand out is Vanderbilt scoring 38 points per game. That is good enough for 12th in the country, and giving up 18, which is a huge margin, a 20-point margin, which is very impressive in the SEC. Texas is scoring 29 points and giving up 14. Now, we do have some notes, things to look at here. Texas has a road game against Georgia next week, so there's potential for a look-ahead spot there. A lot of people have been talking about Arch being hurt, being listed as questionable. I believe he's going to play. College football can be a little wonky in the way that they do their injury reports. Obviously, in the SEC, you're going to get an injury report every Wednesday and then every day going forward until Saturday. They will update that. And I have learned to, how can I say this? I'm a big NBA watcher. I'm a huge Memphis Grizzlies fan, and because of the Grizzlies' past over the last couple of years, I've gotten very acquainted with injury reports at the professional level. And what I've learned is college football tends to be pretty similar. And what I mean by that is when somebody is listed as questionable, that means it's not a 100% chance that they're going to play, but they're probably going to play. And Arch Manning has been listed as questionable on Wednesday's report. I have not seen Thursday's report yet. I'm sure it's out there, but some of them don't get posted all the time. So sometimes you have to either luck into finding them, or you see them because they're posted by somebody that you follow or whatever. But it's not something I'm going out and seeking. I just know that I've seen that he's been listed as questionable. So I believe he's going to play. Some people are taking into account with this game that he might not play. But I see it very likely that he will, because I think he was in concussion protocol technically. In concussion protocol, you can be cleared by your own staff, so Texas can clear him, and then that would be following every rule to say that he can play. That's not like somebody from the NCAA has to step in and say, we have to deem him eligible to play based off of his injury. It's nothing like that. Texas gets the final say. And I believe that they're going to try and play him because I think they believe that they still have a shot at the playoff. Now, I'm not saying they don't. If they win out, it's going to be hard to keep them out probably. But I think he's going to play. You got to beat you got to beat Vandy to have a chance. Vandy has to beat Texas to have a chance. There's a lot of variables going on here. Let's see. Vandy has Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Those are the next 3 games for them. So I think considering that Texas has Georgia next week and Vandy has 2 of the worst teams in the SEC, and then you have Tennessee on the road at the last game of the year. So I definitely think that the remaining schedule favors Vanderbilt, although it's not going to be an easy game on the road to finish the season at Tennessee. But I think if things go accordingly and Vandy wins out up until that game, and they are 10-1 going into Tennessee for the last game of the season, with a chance to go 11-1 and completely solidify themselves, number 1 in the SEC championship game, and number 2 in the playoff. That I don't know that they're going to be stopped at that point. But I'm not all that worried about the very last game of the year right now. I'm more so worried about Texas next game after this. So it's a classic look-ahead spot, looking ahead to Georgia. I think they put more credit to Georgia than they do Vandy. Although Sark's a good coach, I'm not saying that this is a look-ahead spot for them as a staff. I just think it's, one of those where, hey, Vandy has a lot less to worry about. So they're going to put all their focus on you if you're Texas. Now, going back to what I was talking about, the green and the red. So that's a way that I label my sheet here. But what it means is Vandy's in green because they are 6-2. No, they're not. They're better than that. Basically, the green means that they're covering the spread over 70% of the time currently. So they are covering at a very high rate. And Texas is 2-6 against the spread this year. They are covering less than 40% of the time, which does mean a lot to me because Vegas is very, very good at what they do. And so I think if Vegas has a very I guess it's not necessarily a very hard time on them, but if Texas has a very hard time covering the number that they're expected, they're obviously playing below expectations regardless of what their record and results show. So That does mean something to me. Vanderbilt scored 31 versus LSU, who only gives up 4 more points per game than Texas does on the year. So, again, Texas has given up 14 points per game, and LSU's only given up 19 points per game. So, and we know that LSU, kind of their calling card this year has been their defense. It's really the best attribute they really have. And Texas also has a good defense. I don't know that it's that much better. I think I would actually give the edge to LSU's defense as far as results go. Obviously, the points per game is a little bit higher, but so that gives me a lot of confidence that Vanderbilt can go and score a lot of points here. And we've seen this is the college football type of year where there's not a whole lot of great defenses, and this is coming from somebody who looks at points per game scored and points per game allowed every single time we look at a game. And we're looking at some of the best teams in the country every single week. You might notice we don't typically pick games of kind of like lesser, lower level teams. There's a reason for that because they're harder to predict what they're going to do. These really high caliber, high ranked teams are a lot easier to predict. Because their performance is so consistent. And I have seen, I mean, you'd be shocked at how many points per game some of these teams are, over 35 points. So the fact that Vanderbilt is averaging 38 points per game and they just scored 31 versus LSU 2 weeks ago, I don't think they're going to have any problem scoring against Texas. And if we're going to talk about an offensive shootout, I like Vanderbilt here, especially since you're giving me 3 points. If you factor in that they're going to give 3 points to Texas for being the home team, that really makes this game a zero spread, a straight up pick 'em, pick the winner, pick the loser. So in that case, give me Vandy +3 to start off Saturday morning. Let's move into Rutgers at Illinois. Now, here's an interesting game. Rutgers at Illinois. I've talked about before on the show that we make predictions here, and you might have noticed that I've never made a prediction other than a spread. While overs and unders do exist, they are out there. There's a reason why I don't pick overs and unders is because I typically, historically, am not very good at predicting them. Now, that could be for a number of different reasons. Who's to say what they are? I'm not really sure. But I have partnered with somebody who's a great friend of mine who loves doing this type of thing almost as much as I do, who loves predictions, who loves college football. And they've put the work in to make a model. For those of you who don't know what a model is, think of a model as basically a simulation, a simulator that can just run through possible scenarios so many times and take the average result and spit out a number that it's basically predicting for you. So again, a model is basically just, give it all the information and let it spit out the most possible outcome that it can think of. Now, it's very, very complex. Very, very complex. It takes a lot of work. All credit to this person. If their identity needs to be revealed, I will let them decide. But for now, I'm going to keep it anonymous because it takes a lot of work. You have to feed it all the information. It's not something that you can just click the green button, go, and it just starts going. It's not, autonomous. It is completely like you have to feed it everything. And then over time, it will get better and better and better. But there is a lot of, hands-on work that you have to do with it. And this person has done that. So I've talked with him over the last couple of weeks about refining it, getting it better. And where I'm going with this is this person's model specifically predicts overs and unders. And I said, man, this is a great opportunity because I typically don't like overs and unders. I don't predict them very well. And I said, would you want to be a part of the show? Come on, use your model, throw some numbers out there. And they said, maybe not right now, but you're welcome to use the model. So I'm going to use the model and give all the credit to this person, to this anonymous person who I will, reveal their identity if they want me to. But the model has this game going over. And the more I looked into that, so let's go back to my point here, is I typically will pick games and then we'll start to find research that proves predictions as far as the spread is concerned. And as I started doing that, I started to realize that this game became muddier and muddier the more that I got into it. The spread became more and more unclear the more that I got into it. Now, on the surface, Rutgers at Illinois minus 12.5. You're like, man, that's a pretty big number. But Rutgers isn't that good. Well, the thing is, Rutgers isn't as bad as people think they are. They are bad as far as their record is concerned, but when you really dive in, there's a couple interesting things. Now, let's lead it off with everything that we normally do. Rutgers is a 2 on the SRS, so they're barely beating an average team on a neutral site. They have a 2 strength of schedule, so nothing impressive there. Illinois is only at 11 on the SRS, so they're going to beat an average team by 11 points on a neutral site with the 7 strength of schedule, so they've played some tough teams. Now, here's the interesting part. Rutgers scores 31 points per game and gives up 30 points per game. It's only a 1-point difference. Illinois is scoring 32 per game and giving up 27 per game. So both of these teams give up a massive amount of points. We're talking over 3 touchdowns worth of points and then some. And they're both on their own scoring over 31 points per game. So obviously right there, you're like, wow, well, probably going to be a lot of points here. Well, let's dive a little deeper. Illinois has 3 losses, and that is Ohio State, Indiana, and Washington. Those are 3 pretty good losses, especially when you look at the Big Ten. They have beaten Duke and USC, which are 2, were really 1 good win and 1 okay to maybe average win at Duke. Now, Rutgers has wins versus 2 MAC schools and then Purdue. So you might look at that and say, man, this is getting lopsided here. We're looking at Illinois. That's where I was too at this point. Bear with me. Illinois hasn't scored less than 34 points in a win. So every time they have won a game, they have at least scored 34 points, which shows you why they're averaging 32 a game. Rutgers hasn't scored more than 28 points in a loss. So you're like, well, assuming Illinois wins the game, which is what my assumption is, if I had to predict this game, I would say Illinois is going to win the game outright. But, with a 12-point spread, we can't predict outright. But the stats say if Illinois wins, they're probably going to score more than 34. And if Rutgers loses, they're probably going to allow more than 28, which is a lot. But then I got into it. I'm like, okay, it can't be this obvious. Rutgers is better offensively on the road. They are better offensively on the road. So when they go on the road, they play better offensively. Who knows why that is? We don't really know. We just look at the numbers and say, okay, here's that. So they're better offensively on the road. When you look at the over and under percentage, just like we look at the records and percentages of the spread, of how well teams cover spreads, the over for Rutgers this year is 6-2, covering it 75% of the time. The over for Illinois is 5-3, covering 62% of the time. And then to cap it all off, I was a little afraid of what Rutgers might be able to do offensively because Illinois' defense is not very good. And so I said the 12.5 is a lot considering that Rutgers can score points. They can score points. Illinois' defense is not a shutdown defense. We saw what they did versus Indiana. They got torched. We've seen other games where they've given up tons of points. Okay, they're averaging 27 points allowed per game. So I'm afraid that I saw more points than anything in this game, so it led me to the model. The model from our anonymous source believes that this game goes over. So we're going to take, for the very first time on this show, Illinois. I should do that the other way around. Rutgers at Illinois, over 62.5, the very first over-under on this show. That will complete our morning slate. We've got 1 game in the afternoon. 1 game. Let's talk about it. Texas Tech at Kansas State. Kansas State is +7 at home. So they are given 7 points at home. This one's a little tricky. The SRS has Texas Tech at a 19, which is really good. Kansas State at a 6, which is not so good. The strength of schedule for Texas Tech is right at a 0, and Kansas State is at a 2, so not a whole lot of difference there. So we refer back to the SRS having a considerable advantage to Texas Tech. Texas Tech is scoring 43 points a game and only allowing 12. Holy moly. What a difference maker that is. We're talking a 30-point difference in score here. That's incredible. Kansas State scoring 31 per game, allowing 25. Much closer. Kansas State has only played one ranked team all year, and it was Iowa State in week 0. And we know how that game went. They lost. It was the beginning of the end for Kansas State. Now, they have turned it around. They've turned it around. They've won 3 of their last 4. They've scored tons of points. Everybody thought they were dead after like week 3 or 4, considering myself included. I still think they're dead. I just don't think they are giving up. They obviously are not giving up. So I give them credit. But as I look at this Texas Tech team coming in, they are coming off of a loss recently to Arizona State that ruined their undefeated season. I think they're going to be, they're still pretty upset about that. I think that's the only blemish on Texas Tech's resume up to this point. And I think Kansas State hasn't seen anything like what they're going to see against Texas Tech this Saturday. That is easily the best team they will play all season. So this is your Super Bowl if you're Kansas State. You're at home, Saturday afternoon, here's your Super Bowl. Are you ready? I don't know that you are, because you haven't played anybody that's even close in caliber. Everybody that you've played that's close in caliber, Texas Tech would kill that team. Baron Morton is the solidified QB1 for Texas Tech as of now, because as we talked about on Tuesday, their backup, which has been a very, very good backup, one of the best backups in the country, tore his ACL and is out for the year. So they are stuck with Baron Morton, who was the QB1. He's been QB1 the entire year, minus the couple of times that he's been hurt and had to sit out. But it hasn't affected them really because their QB2 was very good. But now that he is gone for the year, I think the hope here is that Baron Morton stays healthy. I think he has some traits and similarities to other QBs who are very good, but they are just injury prone. It's just how it is. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So if he stays healthy, that's going to be the key to the game, key to Texas Tech covering this number. Baron Morton, he leads the Big 12 in pass efficiency rating. So when he is healthy, when he is on the field, he's doing things the right way. He's doing it efficiently. That means lots of completions for lots of yards and very few turnovers. He's also leading the Big 12 in yards per completion at 14. So every time he completes a pass, it's an average of 14 yards, which is incredible. Number one, because it's more than a first down every single time, but it's also a first down and some. So 14 yards per completion is really, really impressive. Then they have 2 players that I really like. Cameron Dickey, who leads the Big 12 in touchdowns and reception touchdowns. So I hope that he would have a good game here. I don't know that Kansas State defensively is going to be able to have anything to totally shut him down. And then they have David Bailey on the defensive side, who leads the Big 12 in sacks with 10.5 sacks on the year in only week 10, which they haven't even played that many games. So that's more than 1 sack per game, which is super, super impressive. I'm going to go ahead and rip this sheet because that is all for this sheet. So all that being said, I think Kansas State likes to think that they're going to be in this game. I think Kansas State likes to think that they can hang in this game. But I'm going to tell you this. They can't win. They're not going to win. But due to the number being 7, we can't pick them as an outright loser because the number is too big for that to make any sense. It's too easy at that point. We have to set ourselves apart, remember? Where'd that go? There it is. So at 7, here's the way I look at it. It's 1 possession. Texas Tech simply needs to just score every time Kansas State scores, and then they have to get 1 stop. And that's 2 possessions right there. If they don't score at any point, they just need to match it. So basically, whatever they do, whatever Kansas State does, Texas Tech needs to match. I don't find that all that challenging for them. I think the talent level on this team is vastly different. I think the resumes on these teams are vastly different. The remaining schedule, the schedule that's been behind them by now, is all vastly different. There's too many people out there that want to blend these teams together and say, this is going to be one heck of a game. I'm not saying it's not going to be one heck of a game. I'm just saying I don't think that Kansas State is going to be in this as much as people think they will be. Now, obviously, they have the benefit of being at home, whatever. I don't know that Kansas State is known for having a crazy home field environment, but it is what it is. My guys at Texas Tech roll here, put Kansas State away, officially dead for the season. That is the sole game in the afternoon. So let's move on to the night game here. Let's try to wrap this up. We don't waste any time on Ole Miss picks because I'm not going to give you my bias and make you think that my bias is unbiased because it's not. But I will give you the prediction. Ole Miss minus 12.5. It's that simple. I'm biased, but I believe it. If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't say it, but I believe it. So Ole Miss minus 12.5 against South Carolina. Keep the train going. Okay? Let's move on. Georgia Tech minus 5.5 at NC State. Now, one thing that I have written down already is that this did start at 3.5 and it has moved to 5.5, which means two things. Number one, it means that more people have been putting their money on Georgia Tech minus 3.5 to then move it up to 4.5. And then so many people put their money on 4.5 that it moved it up again to 5.5. So that's really how this works. That's what people who aren't familiar don't know. This is a fantastic time for me to give my disclaimer. So let me provide a disclaimer about this show. This show is a college football show where I predict the games that I pick out that are typically the marquee matchups of the weekend. I have a hair in my eye. That's not part of the disclaimer. It may be. And what usually happens on the show is I'll go through those games that I pick out and I will predict the outcome. The reason you're going to hear me use things like spreads and overs and unders is to simply set myself apart from all the other people who do a college football podcast. And I say all the other people like it's a small group. I say all the other people like it's maybe 5 to 10 people. No, it's quite literally hundreds to thousands of people who do exactly what I'm doing right this second. And so the reason I do what I do is because I want to find a way to find an edge. Now, I haven't done a very good job at this edge so far, as you guys can tell from my records in the past weeks. But in a best case scenario, my record predicting these games against the spread would at some point speak for itself. It's speaking for itself in the wrong way currently, but it can speak for itself. And like I just referenced in the previous game, if I was picking outright winners, this would go nowhere. This would go nowhere. Nobody comes on here to listen to me pick. What's a good example? Illinois is favored by 12.5 points. If I came on here and said Illinois is going to win, they're going to win the game. There's going to be 99% of you who listen to the show because you genuinely want to hear me talk about football. You would probably say, yeah, duh, dude, probably so. There's nothing riveting about that information. So we use spreads and overs and unders to add a layer of things to talk about, to add a layer of separation between us and the competition. So that is what that is. So disclaimer, we do not partner with a sports book or gambling of any sorts. We're not promoting that activity. We're not telling you to go take the predictions that I'm giving you and take them to a sports book and put your hard-earned money on anything that I've said. But it is up to you what you do in your spare time, what you do with your money. I hope that everybody that is listening is, if they are doing it, that they're doing it responsibly and safely. But that's not what the show is for. So disclaimer, we're not a sports gambling show. We're a college football prediction show. But we use Vegas's odds that they put out in public where everybody can see. There's no age limitation on who can see. You can go to ESPN.com and find the spreads and numbers and overs and unders and all of that information for free. And so we use that to add a layer of interest and to add a layer of entertainment and to add a layer to separate us from the competition. Disclaimer over. Microphone knocked over. Okay. Where I was going with that. So Georgia Tech started at 3.5 earlier this week when the lines first came out. And they don't move to 5.5 like they are now because Vegas is all of a sudden much more confident in Georgia Tech. What happens is is Vegas has to try to find a way to most accurately predict the number where they're going to get 50% of people on one side and 50% of people on the other. If you came out and you said Georgia Tech minus 65.5 points, then 100% of people are going to bet on NC State. And that's not going to do anything for value. That's not going to make the sports books any money. It's not going to make Vegas any money. So there's no point in doing that. So what they want to do is they want to use their witchcraft that they have that somehow is so accurate all the time. Nobody has ever figured out how they do it, but they do it. But they want to try to pick the number that is going to get 100% of the population as close to 50% as possible. So that's why the number starts at 3.5, and it moves based on who's betting what. So if it was 3.5 and it stayed at 3.5 for the entire week, then you would get that percentage on one side would grow and grow and grow and grow and grow of people betting on that number, because the number is like people love it. So what they do is they move it so the percentage moves. Hopefully that makes sense. Just like if it was 3.5 and more people bet NC State than Georgia Tech, then it would move down to 2.5 and then down to 1.5. Then it might flip. That happens sometimes. So hopefully all that makes sense. So it started at 3.5. So many people put money on it that it's moved to 5.5. And the reason why we feel really good about that is because, again, it doesn't move to 5.5 because Vegas is all of a sudden more confident in Georgia Tech. They're trying to balance out the number of people betting on both sides. So that simply means that so many people are confident in this number that it's getting moved, which is good. So now let's finally get into the nitty-gritty of this game. You know we love Georgia Tech here. We know we love Georgia Tech. This is a Yellow Jacket podcast after a Rebel podcast. We love the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. NC State is plus 5.5 at home, so the home dog here. Georgia Tech is 15 on the SRS. NC State is 4. So a considerable difference there. Georgia Tech is a 0 on the strength of schedule. NC State's a 6, so NC State's playing considerably better competition. Both of these teams scoring 30 or more points per game. Georgia Tech is at 36, NC State's at 30, and Georgia Tech is allowing 20 points per game, and NC State is allowing 29. So NC State only a +1 on the score differential category, and Georgia Tech is +16. So a very considerable difference there. Georgia Tech is the best team that NC State will have played all season. We've seen this with multiple teams this year because we have a lot of lopsided conferences, specifically the Big 10, Big 12, and the ACC. And so, yes, NC State has not played anybody as good as Georgia Tech. Obviously, it helps that they're at home, but they are coming off of a 29-point loss to Notre Dame and Notre Dame, and a 19-point loss to Pitt. So they are definitely trending downward. And we know that recency bias is a very real thing in college football predicting, because you're talking about college kids. You're talking about 18 to 24-year-old kids. If they get their butt handed to them in an embarrassing fashion one week, then they're going to carry it over to the next week because they're kids. They don't know how to get over things as quickly as us, wise-brained adults do. And then if it happens again for a second week, like it has for NC State, they're going to carry it over again, sometimes double, because maybe you're a considerable player on this team who is supposed to be contributing in large amounts. And you don't, and it leads to your team losing twice. And so then you walk around campus for 2 straight weeks with your shoulders humped over and your head down because you're very unconfident in yourself and you're starting to question everything. Long pause for dramatics. Now, we know that it doesn't really work that way. Pick your head up, man. NC State's a pretty good team. They're good offensively. They're not as good as Georgia Tech, though. And Georgia Tech has seen plenty of teams as good as them. NC State hasn't seen anybody as good as Georgia Tech. And as much as we would love for those players who have probably gotten well over losing at this point for NC State, they've lost enough times this year. When every team kind of goes into the year expecting to do good things, they haven't done great things. As much as we hate it for them, we can't change the reality of the fact that they've got to play Georgia Tech on Saturday afternoon. Or Saturday night, I should say. So the fact that Georgia Tech's the better team here, they are still undefeated, trying to make their way into the ACC championship game, which is never a guarantee until it's done, and then trying to find their way into the college football playoff. One of the better seasons they've had in their program history, I can only imagine. Brent Key is in every conversation for every coach opening, just like Lane is for every coach opening. And so I think you have a number of different factors working at play here. Similar to Ole Miss. You've got a team here in Georgia Tech that is in uncharted territory for them in recent history, with a coach who has done things that nobody else has been able to do in recent history. So you take a really hot team that's doing things really well, put them with a coach who is doing things really well, so well that everybody else is starting to want him, and you're going to, on the road, albeit, but it's an inferior opponent late in the year when you've got to have wins. Wins are more important now than ever. You can look at Notre Dame. Look at Texas. They're talking about those two teams being in the playoff if they win out, and they've both got 2 losses. What's the difference between that and now is those two teams lost early. If you lose late, it means a lot more. Why? Because everybody has seen what you can do. And if they see you win a bunch of games early and then you start to lose late, they're going to say, they got into conference and they just couldn't take it. They benefited off of a soft early schedule. But if you lose early and everybody writes you off and then you win a bunch of games in the back end, people say, they turned it around. Look at Alabama. Alabama got embarrassed week 1 to one of the worst teams in the country at this point. I should say one of the worst teams in Power 4, not one of the worst teams in the country. They would still beat a lot of G5 teams. But they got dog-walked in week 1, and they turned it around, and now everybody's high on Bama. Nobody really remembers that they lost week 1 to one of the worst teams in Power 4. If you flip it around, and they're undefeated up to this week, and then they go play Florida State this week and lose in that fashion, everybody's going to say, I don't know about Alabama, man. I think they might have been frauds. It's just how it works. Georgia Tech has to win now. You can't afford to lose now. You've got to win now. NC State is dead. NC State is playing for fun. They're playing to stat pat. Stat pat. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I do this every week at one point. At least once. They're pad statting. I did it again. Oh my gosh. It's 12:07. It's Friday morning. Stat padding. They are stat padding. Okay, back on track. They're stat padding. They're playing for fun. They have nothing to lose, which sounds like you should bet on them. But I'm not telling you to bet on anything, but don't. Don't do that. Georgia Tech's the better team. They're going to take care of business. We got 2 games left. Let's move on, man. It's too late. It's too late. I do this every week to myself. But I can't do it. I've got a life to live. Oklahoma at Tennessee -3. Now, you know we locked this in on Tuesday. It was our early lock of the week. We had Tennessee at home, going dark mode. I guess it's the night after Halloween. Saturday night in Neyland against a team that has probably never come to Tennessee before, if at all. Maybe they did way back in the day. Tennessee at night, at home, in a gotta-win situation for both teams. Both of these teams are playing for a playoff spot. If whichever one of these teams loses, they're done. They're out for the year. Whichever one of these teams wins is right back in the conversation. It means everything here. Going into Neyland Stadium at night is hard to do. Hard to win. And with the number being as low as it is, it makes me feel really good about the home team. Because a 3-point spread here is virtually a pick 'em. Virtually, they're telling you, pick the winner of the game. Don't worry about the number. Pick the winner of the game. It's not often that you're going to see a 1-point or 2-point game. It's just not. Because it's just a field goal we're talking about. We're talking about a field goal difference here. They can go tit for tat, down the field, every time, and it don't matter. It's 3 points. If I was going to get into it, I would say Tennessee's only 2 losses of the year are Georgia and Alabama, 2 of the best losses anybody can ask for on their resume. On the other side, you got Oklahoma losing to Texas and Ole Miss. And Ole Miss is one of the best teams in the country. Texas is not. But what we saw against Ole Miss and what I said on Tuesday, the reason why we're locking this game in, because simply Ole Miss cut them open last week, Oklahoma. Ole Miss took Oklahoma and did whatever they wanted to on offense. And that was against an Oklahoma defense that was top 10 in every statistical category on defense. They were the number one defense in the country by statistics. Everybody was unanimous on that. Nobody would disagree with that, I don't think. Maybe some people might throw in Ohio State in that conversation, but they were definitely top 2, top 3. And Ole Miss went into town and said, I'm going to come into your house and I'm going to score 36 points. And you're going to take it. I don't even remember if 36 was the number. It was somewhere up there. And Tennessee got to sit back and watch it like this. I can't really lean back that much further in my chair, but they got to lean back and watch it like this. They had a game, sure. But that film they watched all week this week was Ole Miss going up and down and up and down and up and down the field. And I'm going to take Heupel having that information, playing on his home turf at night with black uniforms, and it's going to be hype. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be loud. And knowing all that, I'm going to take Tennessee -3. We already locked it in on Tuesday. I just had to kind of give the information today. And then we have the very, 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 very last game. That is Cincinnati +10 at Utah. You may notice I said +10 at Utah, which is not normal. Normally I say the home number, but I'm saying it because I have no idea what they're looking at here. I genuinely don't know. I have no earthly idea what Vegas is looking at to say that Cincinnati should be a dog by 10 points. I don't know if they're giving value to Utah being at home at night. Utah's a tough place to play. I have no idea. It's got to be that. It's got to be that. I don't know what else it could be. Here's what I know. Here's what I can find on the internet. Cincinnati's a 12 on the SRS. Utah's a 17. So edge to Utah there. Cincinnati's a 0 on the strength of schedule. Utah's a 3. Not much of an edge at all there. Both of these teams score exactly 38 points per game. Cincinnati gives up 19. Utah gives up 14. You say, okay, easy enough there, Scott. Utah has a favored an edge in every one of those. Sure. You may look at it that way. But this is one of those games. I'm not saying I flipped on this game, but this is one of those games where I would normally say Utah's got the edge statistically. Utah's a pretty good team. They're at home. Tough place to play at night, which is rare for this team because you very rarely get really good, like in the mix, West Coast teams playing at night because they want those teams to play in prime time. And for the rest of the country, prime time is not the night slate for West Coast games. But you got Utah at night. And I'm like, yeah, I'm there. I'm right there with you. Yep, I'm following you. Yep. And then I go, wait, it's 10? 10 points? So I had to look into it further. So we did. Cincy lost week 1 to Nebraska by 3. It was on a Friday night. We know we've always said crazy things happen on Friday nights. And it was in Kansas City, so it was a neutral site game. So week 1, neutral site in a pro stadium that was packed to the brim against Nebraska, who has a decent team, not a great team, but a decent team, and you lose by 3 points. Since then, they've had wins against Kansas, Iowa State, UCF, and Baylor. Baylor has the number 1 quarterback in yards per, or just total yards in Sawyer Robinson. UCF is firmly planted right in the middle of the Big 12. They've been pretty competitive, I would say. Iowa State has been very competitive up until last week, and they have given themselves a shot at the Big 12 championship and at the playoff, which is probably over at this point. But up until last week, it was very much in play. They have Rocco Beck, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And they also beat Kansas. And Kansas has one of the best quarterbacks in the country, too. And he's dynamic, and they do a lot of great things. And so those are 3 to 4 quality wins in my book. Cincinnati also has a player named Cyrus Allen who leads the Big 12 in reception touchdowns, and Caleb Goody who leads in yards per reception. So that's 2 targets that Cincinnati's going to have to throw to. And I go back to one game specifically. That's the Texas Tech game. Texas Tech went into Utah earlier this season. Both teams had a very high outlook on themselves. One team lived up. One team kind of lived up. Texas Tech was the team that lived up to the hype. Utah did not. Utah just lost to BYU. And they have other games. So they lost Texas Tech by a ton at home. And it was a crazy environment. Then they lost to BYU. So they've lost two bigger games that they've played. I think people are sleeping on Cincinnati. Obviously, Vegas is sleeping on Cincinnati. Look at the number. It's 10. It's crazy. It's a huge number. I don't care if they're on the road. Cincinnati has a good team. They're a lot better than what people are giving them credit for. If they win this game, they're in the playoff. I'm telling you, because their schedule is not this strong moving forward. This is probably the last tough game of the year that they have. So I think a lot of people are just sleeping on them. It's that simple. So I'm going to take Cincinnati plus 10 because I'm going to go against my intuition, remember? Remember, I've told you that I've tried to do things differently. Nothing's working. This is really different because I told myself this is Utah. This is Utah. This is Utah. This is Utah. Everything on paper says Utah except the number. The number's way too big. 10 points is way too much. I don't know that Utah is going to be able to get out ahead that much and then hold them off for the entire game because that's what the thing is. You've got to be able to get out ahead early enough to then hold them off. Because if we're going in tit for tat in the third and fourth quarter, you're not going to do it. You're just not going to do it. Cincinnati's offense is too good. I don't know what their defense is going to do. I didn't look into that. Obviously, it's pretty good when you look at their record. And their points per game, 19 is not that bad. It's a lot better than a lot of other teams we've talked about on this show. So give me Cincinnati plus 10. So let's recap really quick. Put the graphic up right here. Tulane minus 5.5 was tonight. We lost that. Vanderbilt plus 3. Rutgers, Illinois over 62.5. That's Saturday morning. And Saturday afternoon, we have Texas Tech minus 7. And Saturday night, we have Ole Miss minus 12.5. Georgia Tech minus 5.5, Tennessee minus 3, and then the late slate for Saturday, the very, very late. I think it's a 9:15 kickoff, I think, Central Time. Cincinnati plus 10. That's your 7 games. That's your card. That's week 10. Last time I said I hope to come back. Actually, no, I said we are going to come back on Tuesday with a good recap, and we didn't. And I apologize for that. So this week I'm not going to say that. But I'm also not going to say I hope we come back on Tuesday with a good recap. I'm just going to say we're done for the night. We're done for the night. We'll see you on Tuesday. I hope the team behind me shows up. For those of you listening on podcasts, it's Ole Miss. I hope they show up. I would love to come on here on Tuesday and just be happy that they won and not really care about anything else. It's that simple. Love to come on here and just say, hey, the card was okay. But Ole Miss won, and that's what matters. But really, I really care about my predictions. Obviously, I do the show because I care a lot about them. If Ole Miss won every game, but I was losing every prediction doing the show, I would feel really bad. I wouldn't mind because Ole Miss won every game, but I'd feel really bad. And because of that, I care about this stuff, man. I want to do good. I want to put another 10-2 type of weekend together. I know it's in there. It's just tough, man. This year is tough. Go back to the very, very, very beginning of the year. This is the last thing I'll say. Go back to the very beginning of the season. My guy Josh Pate on the Josh Pate College Football Show said, we're looking at a season that has the potential to be like 2007 all over again. If you go back and look at 2007, the number 2 ranked team in the country lost a bajillion times, so there was a bunch of fluidity in the rankings. You had upset after upset after upset after upset, week after week after week, and there was no consistency. There was tons of parity, and it was absolutely insane to watch. And he said before the season started, we have the potential to have the same thing on our hands this year in the year of our Lord, 2025. And we're here. It's happening. You got upsets every week. You got things you just can't predict happening every week. it just is what it is, man. So we do our best. We do our absolute best. So I'm sorry that it's not really translating at this moment, but we're going to keep on trying, keep on doing our research, keep on doing our work that we can do for you. So I hope, again, that this brings you together. Sit on the couch, watch some of these games, have something to root for, have a prediction to look forward to, see if it works out, and then you can come back. And if it doesn't work out, you can come back and just bash me in the comments. Just bash me. I don't care. But my hope is that you guys enjoy this stuff as much as I do, and that you go and you watch some of these games, and when you don't have any rooting interest in either of these teams, you turn the game on, and you're like, Georgia Tech, NC State. Scott talked about this game. He thinks Georgia Tech's going to win by 6 or more. Let's go. And then you're like, let's go Georgia Tech. Let's go Georgia Tech. Let's go Yellow Jackets. That's what I hope. That's what I hope. That's what we're here for. I hope you guys have a great weekend. When you guys see this, it's going to be Friday, and I'm going to be in such a great mood because it's Friday, so I hope you will too. Hope the games go well on Saturday. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I love you. Thank you for all the support. We will see you on Tuesday. Howdy toddy.